Hello, everyone. It is time to get into Week 8. And obviously, we still have the Monday game tonight, Giants-Steelers. But we're going to get into everything else. Man, what a crazy week. The NFL just continues to get crazier and crazier every week, it feels like, dude. I mean, some wild games, some great fantasy performances. Some big upsets, big surprises. But we'll start off with this Monday night game. Got Steelers and Giants playing tonight. Obviously, the Giants are kind of all over the place. There's just a lot of questions surrounding who's going to be their QB going forward with Daniel Jones. I mean, obviously they are kind of up and down with him this year on how he's played. Obviously, the defense for the Giants has not been too bad this year, so they could give Russell Wilson a little bit of problems. But we'll kind of see how that works. Russell Wilson had a great first game starting for the Steelers. We'll see if he can get another one going. And then the other thing to mention, too, is Najee Harris has had back-to-back really good weeks, too. Let's see how he plays. I do think that this will be a little bit of a tougher matchup for him, but I do still think that he'll have a decent game going forward. Malik Neighbors, looking like we would expect a bounce-back week for him. He's probably going to be getting a lot of targets today, if I had to assume. And then also to see the Giants' backfield, is Devin Singletary going to come back and take the full role again, or is Tyron Tracy going to be the main guy going forward? So I do believe that we are probably going to see Tyron Tracy take full control of this backfield for the Giants, but it's a terrible offense. Tyron Tracy should just be a desperate start if you needed him into the future. So I do like Pitt -6. I think their defense is just going to absolutely dominate the Giants. The Giants are going to have a tough time scoring today. If anything, the Giants may get a max 2 touchdowns today, max. And then I do think that the Steelers will keep them contained most of the game. So, but anyways, we'll go into some of these scores that we got this week. Starting off with that Thursday night game, you get basically Stafford. He's getting both of his weapons back. And you see a massive improvement in their offense. Going up against the Giants, too, or the Vikings, too, which the Vikings have been phenomenal all year. One of the biggest surprises in the NFL so far this year. And now they have lost back-to-back games. Sam Darnold, not a bad performance. Still a pretty decent streaming QB to start on a week-to-week basis. And then you got with Aaron Jones. He comes back from last week, has a good game. This week, a little bit of a, I wouldn't say a big disappointment. I mean, still gave you not a terrible performance, but not a great one either. Justin Jefferson, obviously, nothing changes with him on a week-to-week basis. The guys continue going to be dominant. He continues to play amazing and he's just very consistent too. Jordan Addison's been somewhat of a disappointment since that breakout game he had. He's obviously a little frustrated, that you could see as well. But overall, I do think that Addison will still be the number 2 option on this team regardless. He just needs to get better chemistry with Sam Darnold or something, I guess. I don't know. Matthew Stafford, great game for him, blow-up game. You know that he is very excited to have his 2 top weapons back. Kyron Williams, obviously, he continues to be a must-start guy every week. I mean, the guy is top 3 running back this year in fantasy. And I don't think it's going to slow down, especially with now their offense is back in full force. I think this is only going to benefit Kyron Williams going forward. So you are very excited to see that with him going into the future. Also, Puka Nacua owners, you are very excited to see him into the future as well with how great he played after coming back from that injury on week 1. Gets the 7 receptions for 106 yards. Massive game for him. I do expect him to continue to be the alpha on this team, with Cooper Kupp taking a little bit of a step back this year, like I said at the beginning of the year. But Cooper Kupp's still going to be a very great option fantasy-wise. He's still going to be a top guy on this offense. So Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua are obviously going to be must-start guys every week. Everyone else on this team, wide receiver-wise, I think has pretty much lost value at this point. You do see the two receiving touchdowns for Demarcus Robinson, but he only had 3 targets. He's obviously not going to get this every game, so just don't even bother looking at that performance from him. And then, everyone else on this team is definitely worth dropping at this point. Next up, we got the Jets and the Patriots. Surprising win here for the Patriots. Very excited. I was very happy to see my Patriots get the dub this week. I was a little skeptical coming into this week because I was like, well, maybe Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams will just absolutely dominate us this week. Maybe they'll finally look like the old Green Bay selves that they are. But nope, that did not happen. Aaron Rodgers puts up not a terrible game, but it wasn't the best either. Breece Hall, he's going to continue to get the bulk of the work in this offense going into the future. I mean, I don't want anyone to overreact on this Braylon Allen rushing touchdown. I mean, Braylon Allen just kind of came in, got some more rushing opportunities in this game. But as you could tell, just look at the rushing side on the averages. I mean, Breece Hall is more efficient. Braylon Allen came in, it was averaging 2.7 yards a carry. So, I mean, we don't want to overreact on Braylon Allen. He obviously didn't play that good coming in. I still think he's a premium handcuff back. I do think that he will be someone that you should roster in deeper leagues just for the handcuff aspect. But other than that, Breece Hall just continues to be a must-start guy every week in my mind. But it is a little concerning seeing this Jets offense. They aren't looking that great. They continue to kind of disappoint. Not very consistent. So you look at that and you take it with a grain of salt. Obviously, they're still going to have their top guys are still going to perform well, I think. I mean, Garrett Wilson with another pretty big week. So Garrett Wilson will continue to be the main guy in this offense. Devontae Adams will be the number 2 guy in this offense. And obviously, they didn't have no Allen Lazard this week either, which Allen Lazard's been a big part of this offense. Not a lot of people talking about it, but he has been a big part of this offense. So you just got to keep that in mind, too, when he comes back. I mean, those 3 guys are definitely going to be the biggest target options for Aaron Rodgers going into the future. So, and then to New England, obviously Drake May went down, head injury. Don't really know the severity of it. I do think that he probably will be out next week if I had to take a guess. And then Jacoby Brissett will once again be starting. But Brissett, he came in. I mean, he didn't play terrible. Really, it was Ramondre Stevenson that stole the show. I mean, he didn't really have like a huge fantasy performance, but I mean, he did get 2 TDs. That's 12 points right there. He did get 20 carries for 48 yards, 3 receptions for 17. So Stevenson with a pretty impressive performance after having a couple back-to-back pretty bad weeks. But yeah, you love to see that if you're a Stevenson owner in fantasy. And then you look at the receiving core, and I mean, it's still pretty much the same. I mean, there's not really anything that you could take away from this. Hunter Henry is honestly a very interesting guy to go pick up tight end wise every week, just because of the fact that Drake May really likes him. Jacoby Brissett's not really the same on him. I think with Drake May, with the passing offense going up a little bit, I think Hunter Henry turns into a pretty decent tight end to start every week. But overall, with everyone else on this team, wide receiver wise, there's no one that sparks any interest in my mind to start on a weekly basis. Demario Douglas is going to continue to be that one guy that I'm like, okay, you could maybe start him if you want. But other than that, everyone else on this wide receiving core, I wouldn't even bother even having a roster spot for. So, but yeah, Patriots with a big win. Eagles-Bengals up next. Taken away from this game, the Bengals are kind of mid. I mean, their offense is not, or their defense is not that great to start off with. Their defense has been struggling all year, and I wouldn't say that the Bengals' offense is terrible, but not the best game from Joe Burrow this week. You only get 234 passing yards, a touchdown, and interception, and then with Chase Brown, sneaks away with the touchdown there. Obviously, we did come into this week saying Chase Brown is probably going to be the lead back going into the future, and it is now showing that he is going to be the lead back. Zach Moss is taking a step back now. So Chase Brown, I think, is going to be definitely that wouldn't say must start guy, but definitely a guy worth starting on a week-to-week basis. But they just have had a hard time getting their running game going in general in Cincinnati this year. And then obviously with no T. Higgins, Jamar Chase does have the bulk of the targets with 11, does get the receiving touchdown. Nothing changes with Jamar Chase. He's still going to be a top 3, top 5 wide receiver at the end of the year. Mike Gesicki actually leads the team in receiving. Don't want to overreact. I do think Mike Gesicki is not a guy going worth. There's so many other tight ends that are worth going and getting than anyone on the Cincinnati team. So just keep that in mind. I wouldn't even bother even picking them up this week. So next up, we got the Eagles. Eagles side of things, Jalen Hurts with a massive game, got the 3 rushing touchdowns. So took all the rushing touchdowns in this game from Saquon, because Saquon had a pretty good game from a rushing standpoint. He only got 1 reception out of the backfield, but Jalen Hurts basically just took all the touchdowns that were rushing for Saquon in this game. Devontae Smith comes away with the receiving touchdown. That was an amazing catch. I mean, what a receiver that Devontae Smith is. So I continue to be impressed with him on a week-to-week basis for sure. He's a hell of a player. A.J. Brown, obviously, he's still the top player in this offense. Don't get me wrong. He's still going to be very consistent. He'll still be the top player going into the future. No one else worth picking up in this offense. But I will say this, that whenever Goddard comes back, definitely a guy that you could look at to start, but obviously Goddard's stock goes down whenever A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith are both fully healthy. So, but yeah, Saquon, nothing changes with him. He's going to continue to be one of the top running backs. And then Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, nothing changes for them. They are must-start guys on a week-to-week basis. So, big win for the Eagles, though. Eagles are looking pretty decent now after a couple of rough weeks. Next up, Browns and Ravens. So this was the big upset of the week. Coming into this week, obviously, no more Deshaun Watson for the Browns. Dorian Thompson-Robinson was also out. So Jameis Winston comes in and puts up a pretty amazing performance, man. He gets a 334 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions from Jameis Winston. No interceptions. Yeah, I said that right. But very excited about Jameis Winston. It's just cool to see him get a win like this, especially. I mean, he's been waiting to get his turn in this offense, and he finally got it. Due to unfortunate circumstances, but he did get it finally. Nick Chubb going into the future, I do think that he will be the back of this team. Like, there's no one else that's going to compete for carries with him. I don't think even Jerome Ford would coming back. So just continue to start Nick Chubb on a week-to-week basis, especially if this passing game continues to trend in the right direction. I do think that he will definitely have better opportunities going into the future. The biggest surprise on this team this week was obviously Cedric Tillman. I mean, this is back-to-back great fantasy weeks for Cedric Tillman, looking like he is going to be an alpha wide receiver on this team, maybe. I mean, this was very, very surprising to see him get 2 touchdowns in this game. Elijah Moore leading the team in targets with 12, and then Jerry Jeudy being the 3rd on the depth chart with 8 targets. He still put up a decent performance. I mean, 5 receptions, 79 yards. So, but obviously the passing volume was huge in this game. David Njoku, he's going to be a must-start tight end going into the future as well with Jameis under center with the 5 receptions, 61 yards, and a TD. So just keep that in mind that David Njoku is a must-start guy. But Cedric Tillman, I mean, hey, all the people who picked him up on waivers this week and started him, you are living right. And then obviously if you even have him on your bench, you kind of have a lot of you're kind of excited about this guy going into the future. We'll see how next week turns out, but I mean, if he puts up another great performance next week, I mean, this guy might be a guy that you might start flexing. Next up, we go with the Ravens side, and Lamar, obviously, still a pretty decent performance from him. But these aren't the Lamar numbers that we've been expecting or what we've been getting all year. Derrick Henry obviously comes away with the rushing touchdown. Derrick Henry continues to play very well. He's very consistent so far this year. And then you look at Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers actually really did get involved late in this game. It took him a little bit, but Zay Flowers obviously, with another impressive performance, he's obviously going to continue to lead this team in targets going into the future. And then you get another Mark Andrews touchdown. 5 receptions, 36 yards, and a touchdown. So you're very happy to see Mark Andrews continue to be a pretty big threat in the red zone for the Ravens. So that trend will probably continue with him. So, but yeah, big win for the Browns after all the drama and all the injuries and stuff that have been plaguing this team. I mean, to go out and get a win like that's very impressive. So, I mean, my God, not much to take away from this game. We won't really talk too much about this game. The Lions are obviously for real. Their offense is absurd. One of the more unique offenses in the NFL. Obviously, they have so many weapons on their team. First off, we got to mention that Jahmyr Gibbs, once again with another great game. 11 carries for 127 yards and a touchdown. David Montgomery finds the end zone as well. I mean, both of these guys just continue to find the end zone every single week. So you just continue to start both of these guys every week. There's no reason not to on such a high-powered offense. Sam Laporta actually has a very good week. It was National Tight End Day, so a lot of tight ends actually had very great weeks this week. And Sam Laporta was one of them. He actually led the team in targets. He gets the 6 receptions, 48 yards, and a touchdown. So I know all the Sam Laporta fantasy owners are very happy to see him finally have a pretty decent performance with some volume too. And then you look at everything else. I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown only had 2 targets in this game. He did get a touchdown, but there's so much rushing involvement. I mean, only 15 pass attempts from Jared Goff in this game, 24 rushing attempts in this game overall. I mean, it was just a massive blowout. The Titans couldn't do anything. I mean, you go to the Titans side of things, the only thing that you can really take away from here is obviously Tony Pollard is really the only guy worth starting in this offense going into the future. But I did say that last week. Calvin Ridley with 15 targets in this game. Now with no DeAndre Hopkins in this offense, you would expect Calvin Ridley to be the number one guy going forward. I mean, he had 10 receptions, 143 yards. So a massive game for him after having a couple really, really bad weeks. You do love to see that from Calvin Ridley. Does that really change anything with him to me? I wouldn't necessarily say so. I mean, I think Calvin Ridley's going to continue to be the main guy passing-wise, but it's a terrible offense. He's not going to be able to put up a performance like this every week, so just keep that in mind. And then maybe if Will Levis comes back, I don't really know what's going to happen with that. I mean, maybe Will Levis will start again. Maybe Mason Rudolph will start again. I mean, the Titans are terrible. That's just the bottom line. So it's just really hard to start anyone in that offense other than maybe Tony Pollard. Next up, Dolphins and Cardinals. This was a really good game. Went down to the wire. Cardinals get the game-winning field goal. I mean, that's back-to-back game-winning field goals for the Cardinals now. And the Cardinals are 4-4. So, I mean, the Cardinals are actually not looking too bad this year. Kyler Murray had a really good game. 307 passing yards for 2 TDs. James Conner actually came away with a pretty decent game, too. He got the rushing touchdown, 20 carries, 53 yards, 2 receptions for 16 yards. Big game for Trey McBride, 9 receptions, 124 yards off 11 targets. So Trey McBride leading the team in targets this week. Marvin Harrison with a massive game, too. He gets the receiving touchdown, 6 receptions for 111 yards off of 7 targets. I know Marvin Harrison Jr. owners are very happy to finally see that performance that you were seeing the first couple weeks from him coming back into light after having a couple down weeks. And then Michael Wilson also came away with a receiving touchdown too, so that's good to see from him. You also look at the Dolphins side of things. So with the Dolphins, with Tua back, Devon Achane comes in and feasts, man. Devon Achane obviously is looking like a very scary running back to play against if you're in fantasy football. I am very I'm fairly confident in saying that that Devon Achane could be an absolute league winner if he continues to play how he plays with Tua under center. Obviously, we got to make sure Tua stays healthy first off the rest of the year, which we'll see what happens with that. But Devon Achane has put up, it's over 20 points a week with him easily when Tua's under center. Obviously gets way more involved in the passing game. Tyreek Hill, you'll take that performance, but it's still not the best. Jalen Waddle had a little bit of a down game too, so but obviously you're happy to see Tua back. He's still going to get in the feel of things, and then once they all get back in rhythm again, I think that it's going to be a really, really it's going to be a really good offense once again. So next up, we got the Falcons and Buccaneers. Looking into this matchup, obviously, the last time these two teams played, it was one of the craziest games of the year. Kirk Cousins threw for 500 passing yards. Baker had a massive game too. But obviously, this game was still pretty good offensively. Obviously, it wasn't as crazy as the last one was, but this one was still a pretty crazy game. Falcons actually come up with the win. Kirk Cousins still throws for 4 passing touchdowns. Bijan Robinson, once again with another really big week, over 20 fantasy points. And then you look at the receiving side of things, and Kyle Pitts finds the end zone twice. Huge week for him. Darnell Mooney finds the end zone off of 7 targets. He led the team in targets this week. Drake London kind of took a step back this week. I do still think he's the alpha wide receiver in this wide receiving core, though. Darnell Mooney is obviously going to continue being number 2, and then you have a very solid top 10 tight end option in Kyle Pitts on a week-to-week basis, too. As long as the passing volume always stays up in this offense, they are going to feast off of these Kirk Cousins pass attempts, so we'll always keep that in mind. Baker Mayfield, 50 pass attempts in this game. Really what you can take away from this is Rachaad White actually came away with the receiving touchdown. Really, this was a split backfield with Rachaad White and Bucky Irving at this point. It's just going to continue to be that way. So these guys are going to be some risky guys to start on a week-to-week basis, but they will still have some fantasy value. Cade Otton, with no Mike Evans and no Chris Godwin, Cade Otton's looking like he's just going to be Baker's number 1 guy. Gets 10 targets in this game, 9 receptions for 81 yards and 2 TDs. He just had a massive game. And then, obviously, Jalen McMillan was a huge waiver wire pickup this week for a lot of people. Only comes up with 7.5 fantasy points. He did have 7 targets, but I do think going into the future, he is still someone that I would consider keeping just in case. Because, some wide receiver is going to have to step up here. But if you did go and pick up like Trey Palmer or Sterling Shepard, either one of those guys, I don't think that they're worth a roster spot. So those guys you can definitely consider dropping. So next up, we got the Packers and Jaguars. Packers game-winning field goal in this game. Taken away from this, Packers side of things, Jordan Love gets hurt once again, but the test came back. It's not serious. It's not a long-term injury. Will I expect him to play this week? I don't think so, just because of the fact that they do have a bye the next week. So if that's the case, I do think that they will probably be a little hesitant bringing him back just so they can give him enough rest so he's fully healthy for the rest of the season. But there is a chance he could come back, and if he doesn't come back this week, I actually am not too hesitant to go ahead and start Malik Willis because Malik Willis has both the rushing upside and the passing upside so far this year when he started under center. So he could be a guy definitely worth picking up off the waivers this week if you need a QB. Josh Jacobs, this was his game that we were expecting him to have. Massive game against the Jaguars defense, 25 carries for 127 yards and 2 touchdowns. What a big game for him. Tucker Kraft comes away with the receiving touchdown. He had a really good game as well. Romeo Doubs tied this team in targets this week with Christian Watson. Romeo Doubs continues to look like a pretty decent start flex play every week at this point. Jaden Reed has kind of taken a step back these past couple weeks. I do expect him to come back at some point and be that alpha guy. Like, we'll see him blow up once again at some point. But only if Jordan Love comes back. So we just got to keep that in mind. When Jordan Love comes back, obviously the passing game just blows up in this offense. And then you go to Jacksonville's side of things. From what it looks like, Trevor Lawrence, he continues to play, decent. He's not a bad streaming option at QB every week, but it's just the Jacksonville's just not that great. They have so much talent, but they're just not really that intriguing. Other than Brian Thomas, who continues to look like one of the best rookie wide receivers this year. Him and Malik Neighbors both. They've both been absolute studs this year. Christian Kirk out for the year, I believe. I think that he is done for. So obviously this is going to absolutely boost Brian Thomas Jr. going into the future. And then you also are very excited about Evan Ingram, who continues to play pretty decent. He also got a touchdown as well. So Evan Ingram also is a guy that is for sure intriguing going into the future as well with no Christian Kirk anymore. Is there anyone else on this team that I would be excited about going into the future? Probably not. Gabe Davis maybe if he's healthy, maybe, but other than that, I don't really know. So we'll need a week to see, basically, if that's even something to consider. Next up, we got Texans and Colts. So obviously, taken away from this game. Oh, my back. The Colts offense is obviously not good. They do get Jonathan Taylor back, though, and Jonathan Taylor has a really good game, 20 carries for 105 yards and a TD. So, obviously, Jonathan Taylor kind of just picks up where he left off whenever he got injured. Josh Downs actually had a big game. But let's look at this real quick with Anthony Richardson. Dude was 10 for 32 in this game. 10 for 32. That is embarrassingly bad. But 9 targets for Josh Downs. Comes out with the receiving touchdown, too. Obviously, this isn't going to happen every week with him, but Josh Downs is definitely looking like a guy you got to go and start every week for sure. Just kidding. I wouldn't start him on a week-to-week basis with Anthony Richardson under center, but pretty big game for him. So, I'm impressed with that. Pittman, obviously down game. But, yeah, Josh Downs and Pittman are the only intriguing wide receivers on this team. But other than that, no one else. These receivers, they're really hard to even start on a week-to-week basis, too. So, with Anthony Richardson under center, with how inefficient he is. And then you go to the other side of things. You got a more efficient quarterback in C.J. Stroud. Obviously, Joe Mixon continues to impress, man. Joe Mixon with a monster game. He continues to drop over 20 fantasy points a game when he's healthy. Stephon Diggs, a little bit worrisome about his non-contact injury. He could be out for the year. If he is out for the year, Tank Dell goes up 100%. Nico Collins, when he comes back, is going to be a major alpha on this team. So if Stephon Diggs is out for the year, you can definitely see a boost of production in Tank Dell and Nico Collins 100%. You could maybe see a boost in protection from Dalton Schultz too, but I don't want to get too excited yet. Dalton Schultz has had a really bad year so far, but I would expect him to get a couple more targets his way going into the future. So Dalton Schultz could be a little interesting going into the future. But yeah, big loss for Stephon Diggs not being here anymore if he is out for the year. So next up, we got the Saints and the Chargers. Obviously, with no Derek Carr, the Saints are terrible. And then they decided to switch QBs during the game. That didn't help out anything either. Obviously, Alvin Kamara continues to be that alpha on this rushing side of things and pass catching. I mean, 11 targets out of the backfield. Alvin Kamara is going to continue to get that usage as a receiver every single week. We haven't seen it slow down at all. And then obviously with no more Rashid Shaheed, Chris Olave is going to be the number one guy going forward, and it showed in this game with the 8 receptions, 107 yards off of 14 targets. So you're obviously going to continue to see a boost of production from Olave going into the future. So all you people who have Olave on your team, you should be very excited that he will end up starting to produce how he should be producing that round 2, fringe round 3 pick that he was going into the draft this year. You go to the Chargers side of things, and Justin Herbert continues to play pretty well with the receiving core that he has. And they're 4-3 on the year, so pretty decent start to the year for the Chargers too, especially with them basically almost going clean house on their whole offense other than Justin Herbert. But yeah, J.K. Dobbins, he's continuing to be the bell cow back for this Los Angeles team. So just expect to always start him on a week-to-week basis, and he does have that receiving role as well. He tied the team in targets this week. And then you have Ladd McConkey. He has a blow-up game. He gets the 6 receptions for 111 yards and 2 touchdowns. Definitely could be a huge sell high candidate for him. He only had 6 targets, but at the same time, I love this guy. I think that he has a lot of talent, so I do think that he will continue to play very well going into the future. I think he will continue to be their top guy on offense too, like when it comes to the receiving side of things, so you always have that upside with him. But yeah, huge game for him. Biggest game of his rookie season so far. Next up, we got the Bills and the Seahawks. Going into this game, the Seahawks just looked really bad. Their offense was not clicking on any cylinders whatsoever. I was actually expecting a huge blow-up game from Jackson Smith-Njigba with no Lockett, or not no Lockett, but no DK. I was expecting Jackson Smith to have a massive game. He still puts up a decent performance. He gives you almost 13 points. So, I mean, you can't be too mad about his performance, but obviously I was expecting him to have a bigger one. Kenneth Walker kind of saved the day a little bit on the receiving side of things, but not the best game for him either. This offense just did not look good this week. I mean, they only got 1 touchdown in this game, and it was Zach Charbonnet, who had 3 carries for 4 yards. So, and then you go to the Bills side of things. You're obviously very excited to start Josh Allen and James Cook every week. James Cook with a massive game, the 17 carries, 111 yards, 2 touchdowns. And obviously he has that receiving role too with the 3 receptions for 22 yards. So James Cook's continuing to going to be a guy that I'm very high on this year. I'm going to stand on it. He's had a great year so far. He's in an amazing offense. He's their number 1 guy. And there's really no competition with him right now in the backfield. So I think he's going to continue to play very well. Obviously, Ray Davis is kind of a little bit of a concern, but I don't think he's going to really hurt his stock that much. But Ray Davis is a pretty decent premium handcuff back. Shakir with the blow-up game. Shakir shows out, 9 receptions, 107 yards off of 10 targets. Keon Coleman has a great game too. He gets a touchdown, 5 receptions for 70 yards off of 7 targets. Dalton Kincaid with a great game. He gets 4 receptions, 31 yards, and a touchdown off of 7 targets. And then you go to the bottom and you see Amari Cooper, 1 reception for 3 yards off of only 2 targets in the game. I don't want to overreact because I do think he's going to be the number 1 guy going into the future still. But Amari Cooper definitely took a step back in this game. I still think that he's fully trying to learn this offense and everything still. So once he gets fully comfortable in this offense and he learns every play that he needs to learn, he's going to be the number 1 guy going forward, in my mind. So, but Shakir and Coleman owners, you got to love seeing that, them both having blow-up games. So I wouldn't expect this from a week-to-week basis, though these guys are obviously boom-bust guys. So, let's see. Next up, we got Broncos and Panthers. Obviously, this was a game that I wasn't paying attention to. I don't think really anyone other, if you're a Panthers or a Broncos fan, was really paying attention to. But even if you were a Panthers fan, you probably weren't even paying attention to it. Obviously, Bryce Young starts under center. I mean, not a good game, obviously. Chuba Hubbard, not a great game either. Didn't play that well. There's nothing to take away here. There was no Deontay Johnson in this game. Xavier Legette got a touchdown. You love to see that. I mean, he's going to probably continue to be a guy that is going to continue to grow his role in this offense. Could end up being the number 2 guy going into the future for sure. But Deontay Johnson will continue to be the number 1 guy in this team whenever he's healthy. I mean, this offense is terrible. And then Broncos, Bo Nix has been impressing me these last – I mean, he's had great matchups, so that's helped out a lot. But Bo Nix has been playing very well. He's taken advantage of these matchups he's had. He had 3 passing touchdowns in this game. He has the rushing touchdown as well. Cortland Sutton with a massive game, 11 targets. After having that donut last week, he comes in and leads the team in receiving. He has 100 fucking receiving yards. It's like, really? But yeah, off 11 targets. And then just kind of spread out all across pretty much all across places, just spread out with all these passing touchdowns. So, I mean, you can't really take anything from this other than Cortland Sutton's the number 1 guy. No one else on this team is worth starting. Javonte Williams with a disappointing performance. So, yeah, Javonte, obviously, you don't like seeing that with him, but he'll continue to be the top guy. Chiefs Raiders. This game actually ended up being closer than I thought. The Raiders actually offensively did not look that bad. Gardner Minshew was actually pretty efficient in this game. Didn't throw any picks. He did have a fumble though. He did have a fumble. But I will say this: not a bad performance from Gardner Minshew. Brock Bowers, obviously, he's going to continue to be a must-start tight end every single week. Leads the team in receiving. Jacoby Myers, I did say that it is a bad offense, but Jacoby Myers is number 1 here going into the future. So he's definitely worth maybe even flexing on a week-to-week basis because there's really no one else to pass to on this team. He came with the receiving touchdown. Alexander Madison is, 14 carries for 15 yards is embarrassing. He obviously has that receiving role, which the receiving role kind of saved him this week. But yeah, their offense is just really bad. I mean, Alexander Madison cannot, he's just not going to be a guy that I would be excited to start every week. Kareem Hunt, on the other hand, is a guy that I would be excited to start every week until Isaiah Pacheco comes back. He continues to play very well. Didn't really have a big receiving role this game, but he did get that rushing touchdown, so that really saved his fantasy day. Mahomes continues to be somewhat mid when it comes to being a QB to start on a week-to-week basis, but you do get an Xavier Worthy touchdown. You do get a Travis Kelce touchdown. Travis Kelce with his biggest game of the year so far. And then Xavier Worthy, you're very happy to see him get a touchdown. I think that he will continue to grow his role every single week, and I think he will end up being one of Mahomes' favorite targets going into the future. So, and then obviously with DeAndre Hopkins, first game with the Chiefs, he gets the 2 receptions for 29 yards. So I do think that he will have a bigger role in this team going forward. Just because this was his first week, I don't want to overreact how he played. So, yeah, we'll kind of see how that goes. Bears Commanders. Obviously, this was the wildest ending of the week, easily. Obviously, the Bears came in, had an absolute terrible first half. I mean, it was so bad that I couldn't even comprehend how bad it was. I mean, their offense was not clicking on any cylinders. Caleb Williams only had like 30 passing yards coming into the second half, which was an embarrassment. And then DeAndre Swift comes alive at the end of this game. Gets you 18 carries for 129 yards and a touchdown. Had that huge 56-yard TD run. I think it was a TD run. But he had that 56-yard run. You look at the receiving side of things, you can't take anything away from this game, receiving-wise. I mean, it was just a terrible passing game for Caleb Williams. When the passing goes down like this, none of these guys are startable. But when the passing volume goes up, like we saw the last couple weeks with the Bears, you could make a case to start any of these receivers. But this week, all of them disappointed. You go to the Commander side of things, and Jaden Daniels puts up a pretty decent performance once again. Obviously, the one passing touchdown ended up being that miracle Hail Mary play at the end. One of the craziest Hail Marys I've probably ever seen, with how it bounced back to a guy who was just wide open in the end zone somehow. Noah Brown was just in the right place at the right time. Brian Robinson, not the best performance from him this week. But I think he's still a guy you got to start on a week-to-week basis. He is the number one guy here. Terry McLaurin, great performance. I mean, he's going to continue to be the alpha on this team. Zach Ertz getting a lot of usage as well. So Zach Ertz is someone that you could consider starting in the tight end position every week. Don't overreact over Noah Brown getting a lucky Hail Mary touchdown here. I will not expect Noah Brown to have any fantasy value going into the future, so just avoid him. But yeah, what a game that was. I mean, what a finish. And then last but not least, we had the Cowboys and the 49ers. Both of these teams having some struggles this season. Both teams desperately needing a win. I will say that injuries are kind of the reason the 49ers have been struggling as much as they have been. Dallas, on the other hand, they've had injuries also plaguing them, especially on the defensive side of things with no Micah Parsons or anything. But you take away from this game that Dak Prescott, he's okay. He hasn't really been that efficient this year. Ezekiel Elliott actually comes away with a rushing touchdown in this game. But there was no Rico Dowdle. Rico Dowdle got ruled out of this game like an hour before the game even started because of an illness. So Dalvin Cook actually comes in this game too and doesn't really do much. I don't think Dalvin Cook has any fantasy value going into the future. CeeDee Lamb with the blow-up game. He gets 17 targets, 13 receptions for 146 yards and 2 touchdowns. So this is that blow-up CeeDee Lamb game that all the CeeDee Lamb people were all waiting for. So there it is for you right there, and it came off an L. Obviously, there's no other people worth starting on this receiving core other than Jake Ferguson. Jake Ferguson did see 8 targets. Just didn't get a lot of receiving yards in this game, but he did get 6 receptions. So not the worst performance from Jake Ferguson, but he will continue to have a big role in this offense going into the future. And then with the 49ers, Brock Purdy, not a bad game. Isaiah Guerrero actually came in with the rushing touchdown as well as Brock Purdy. With Isaac Guerrero, overall Brock Purdy had a great game. With Isaac Guerrero, if Jordan Mason somehow gets ruled out, which I don't think he will, apparently he was still good to go. Like, they just didn't want to throw him in at the end of that game. Isaac Guerrero could be a guy that you could go pick up off waivers this week because, I mean, obviously he's on such an amazing offense with the 49ers. But I think Jordan Mason will be back next week. So either way, Guerrero actually had a pretty decent game. And then George Kittle with the massive game too. We were expecting that. Debo ended up playing ended up getting hurt again, but I think Debo will be fine. Ricky Pearsall comes in as well. Doesn't have a bad game, actually. 4 receptions, 38 yards, and then he also has 1 carry for 39. So not a lot of volume for Ricky, but pretty decent fantasy performance. I do expect Ricky to continue to grow going into the future with his role on this team, so I think it will continue to grow for sure. But yeah, you're very excited to see George Kittle continue to dominate, be the number 1 tight end right now. And then Debo should be very optimistic going into the future. So, all right, that should be it for me. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you for everyone